Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, today I would like to share my thoughts on relationships. How are our relationships with our friends, with our neighbors, with our colleagues, with our siblings? What should we do if we have some misunderstandings? What does the Bible tell us? It is written in Matthew 18th chapter verses 15 to 17. Matthew 18th chapter verses 15 to 17. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault before thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as an heathen man and a publican. Have you read the first verse carefully? The first line of the first verse, which we have read now. If thy brother shall trespass against thee, it's not you or us trespassing against our brother or sister or neighbor. Even if they trespass, we have to go and tell them their fault. First, only to him or her. If they understand their fault and renew the relationship, you will be benefited, or we will be benefited. Suppose that person is adamant and would not listen. Next step is to take with us 1 or 2 more people and try to put sense into that person. If the person continues to be adamant, the next step is to tell the church. If that person does not heed to the church and does not try to renew the relationship, you must stop worrying about that person. Are we following the above 3 steps? In most cases, it is a no. Let's look at 1 Corinthians 6th chapter, verses 1 to 6. 1 Corinthians 6th chapter, verses 1 to 6. Dare any of you, having a matter against another, go to law before the unjust and not before the saints? Do you not know that the saints shall judge the world? And if the world shall be judged by you, are ye unworthy to judge the smallest matters? Know ye not that we shall judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life? If then ye have judgments of things pertaining to this life, set them to judge who are least esteemed in the church. I speak to your shame. Is it so that there is not a wise man among you? No, not one that shall be able to judge between his brethren? But brother goeth to law with brother, and that before the unbelievers. Don't we have a single wise person in our immediate family or the church? Why do we directly approach the lawyers or the advocates? Look at the first verse of 1 Corinthians 6. We are taking the problems or issues before the unjust. Verse 2 tells us that saints or believers shall judge the world. And if the world shall be judged by saints and believers, can't we judge or deal with the smallest matters? Look at verse 3. It tells that we shall judge angels. When we are in a position to judge angels, Are we not in a position to judge things that pertain to this life? Verse 4 tells us that if the misunderstanding pertains to materialistic things of this world, we have to select the least esteemed in the church to deal with the issue. This is something to think of. Why should we select, or why should we contact the least esteemed to deal with the issue? Let's turn to 1 Corinthians 1st chapter 20th verse. 1 Corinthians 1st chapter 20th verse tells us that God made foolish the wisdom of the world. In the same chapter, God tells us that He hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. In fact, out of our ignorance, we may be thinking that we are wiser than others. Most of our problems arise due to our ego. So by approaching or entrusting our problems to the least esteemed, we are forced to put aside our pride, shed our ego, and ask that person to deal with the issue. Come back to 1 Corinthians 6th chapter 1 to 6. Verse 5 tells us that it is a shame that there is not a single wise man who is able to judge between brethren. Verse 6 shows us that brothers are taking every opportunity of going against each other to law before the unbelievers. It is really a shame that in the present day, even pastors are approaching the law or the courts instead of trying to resolve the differences amicably. Believers and unbelievers have different values and commitments. We have different framework and direction to our lives. Our lives and direction must be based on the Bible, which the unbeliever cannot comprehend. By taking our issues or problems or cases to the law before the unbeliever, we are giving a chance to the Satan to meddle with our lives. Please turn to Matthew 5th chapter, verses 23 to 24. Matthew 5th chapter, verses 23 and 24. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift. Once again, as I mentioned earlier in my sermon, here also the word against is used. Even though we are not at fault, we have to take the initiative and try to renew the relationship. So, firstly, even though we haven't committed the mistake, we have to take the initiative to renew the relationship. Next, we have to try time and again, if possible, with the help of 2 or more people, to come to an understanding. Lastly, we have to shed our ego. We have to step down the pedestal of pride and endeavor for reconciliation. So, let us humble ourselves, put aside our ego and pride, and make every effort to reconcile with those who hurt us or whom we have hurt. May God bless you.